It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily with positive vibes. Yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines. This is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines. This is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines. This is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
We have a very special guest joining us this week on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. I am honored and happy to have here joining us Jared Greenberg, a host and reporter with TNT and NBA TV. Jared, welcome to the show.
Renee, thank you for having me. Been waiting to do this for a while. I'm excited.
I am too. I am excited because this is a great time of the season where we are seeing teams make their push towards the playoffs. We've seen two teams already clinch the playoff berth as of our conversation at this time. And I'm sure by next week we'll possibly see one more. So I'm curious. I'm going to actually start with a team that is not anywhere close to making the playoffs, the Golden State Warriors, because we saw Steph Curry return to the court Thursday night. He came back. Half of the Splash Brothers are back on the floor, dropped 23 points, and the Warriors lost to the Raptors, who actually clinched a playoff berth with their win. But I'm also curious your thoughts on Steph Curry's return, and if you think he should kind of take it easy or come back 100%, being that the Warriors are not even – they're at the bottom of the West right now.
Renee, I love that he's back. You know, I think that in this day and age when we are talking about load management and teams tanking, it's nice to see a player and an organization that just wants to get out on the court. And I think he is 100%, or at least as close to 100% as he's going to be, because I don't think the team, especially coming off of what happened in the finals last year with Kevin Durant, would put a player in position to be out there. Because, like you said, what good does it do if he's out there and not 100%? Because they're not playing for anything in terms of wins this time of the year. But I think it's great for a couple of different things. Number one, it gets him on the court with some younger guys, particularly like an Andrew Wiggins, who's going to be a part of a rotation that's going to expect to contend for a title next year. And then I think it gets him ramped up. And what I'm really excited about, too, and this is a kind of a selfish thing, just because I really love international basketball, that hopefully this is getting Steph Curry ready enough playing time where he feels comfortable going into the Olympics and he'll be a part of the Olympic team, because I think, Team USA fans will really enjoy seeing him try and win a gold medal for the first time in his career.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I know there have been some discussions as to whether he should still be on load management, because they aren't playing for anything versus coming back in and playing his usual minutes. And I agree with you. I mean, why not take this opportunity? It's not like it's a muscle injury, an ACL or an Achilles or something like that. It is. It was a broken hand. So he's back and he has the opportunity to now work players into, the Warriors system and start preparing for next year. Why not?
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. So as we talk about teams and, making pushes to that close out the regular season on a high note, we can't go without talking about the MVP race. It has been an exciting one to watch how it's unraveled throughout the course of the season. The three big names, of course, Giannis, possibly winning MVP again for the second year in a row, repeating. We could have LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard. Who is your front runner as of today? Could change by next week, but who is your front runner if we were to end the season right now at this moment that you think is a shoo-in to win the MVP for this year?
Yeah, Renee, I don't even think it's close at this point. I think it's Giannis, and I think he's winning by a landslide. I think he'll become the 12th individual to win back-to-back MVP awards in NBA history. I just think when you consider all the it's not about what others are not doing. This is not a slight at LeBron. Mm-hmm. It's not a slight at Luka. It's not a slight at Harden. But it's more about the fashion in which Giannis is performing and at the level of which he's doing it with his team. I mean, they are head and shoulders the best team in basketball. Giannis is putting up numbers that are far superior of what he did last year. And the Bucks and Giannis are doing it in such efficient fashion where he's not even playing 30 minutes a night, right? And they lead the league in number of wins by 20 points. They lead the league in wins by number of 10 points. Their net rating is historically good. I just don't even see how right now, sans a Giannis injury that shuts him down for the final 20 or so games, I don't see how Giannis did not win the award.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I am unapologetically a huge LeBron James fan, taking my reporter hat off. I will always admit that. But I agree with you. The fact that, you just look across the board at what Giannis has done for the Bucks this season. And I mean, it's by no surprise that they're the first team to clinch a playoff berth before the Raptors, that they were the first team. So yeah, you look at his numbers, and I even look at the All-Star weekend when we saw Team Giannis versus Team LeBron. In my opinion, that was almost kind of like the epitome of why Giannis is an MVP candidate. Look at what he was able to do with Team Giannis, a team that a lot of us honestly looked on paper and was like, oh, they're going to get blown out by Team LeBron. When you look at players like LeBron, AD, Kawhi, James Harden on that team, and you have Team Giannis, which is a younger group, but they just looked like they were not as talented. But Team Giannis in that second quarter, that I was like, you know what? He just sealed his stamp to the MVP for this year again, because you saw him taking on the best of the best and still putting the team on his back and the All-Star game. So I tend to agree with you, even though, I would love to see LeBron James win it, but the best man has to get MVP, and that's Giannis right now. So let's move on to the rookies. I mean, unfortunately, Zion Williamson was sidelined throughout the beginning part of the season. He's come back. He's shown a lot of what we expected and more, honestly, in his return to the court for the Pelicans. Ja Morant, another name that has been lights out. My goodness, what he has done in Memphis with the Grizzlies has been exciting to watch. Someone that a lot of people were a little unsure about his transition to the NBA. So taken aside from just the Rookie of the Year candidate in your opinion, but just your overall thoughts on these top rookies and how they've transitioned into the NBA.
It's been awesome, right? I mean, how exciting is it on a night in, night out basis all year to watch Ja? And then, Zion comes in with all this hype and expectation. You're like, all right, well, he's not going to live up to that.
Right.
Only your guy LeBron has ever been a person who's not only lived up to it, but probably, it's fair to say, exceeded those expectations, right? And for Zion to come in, and he's been better than advertised, and that's not even taking into account the fact that he did have a surgery, right? Which should have put him on the 8 ball, and all these people, trying to body shame him and talk about, the way he looks or the way he runs or whatever it is. I just think he's been sensational, and I think what it goes to say is that, while LeBron is an absolute all-time great, and at some point he's going to slow down, or at some point he's not going to play basketball anymore unless, he's just really not a human being and is a robot like he might be, and he plays until he's like 50. But I just think that it says that the changing of the guard is going to be a good one for us, and hopefully it's not for a while. But these young players in the NBA are giving us reason to believe that for the next 10, 15, 20 years, we're in really good shape with the amount of star power we have in this league.
It's ironic you say all that, because at the start of 2020, one of my friends tweeted out, like, this is the decade we're going to see LeBron James retire. And I was like, no, this is not the decade. He's going to make history some more. He's going to play with his son. He's going to play another decade. Right. But you're right. We are seeing kind of the passing of the torch. I know we're talking about Ja Morant and we're talking about Zion Williamson, but also in that category, you can include, some of these guys in their second year, and players like Jason Tatum and Luka, Trae Young, that are also making a huge name for themselves. But I am actually curious, and as you talk about LeBron exceeding expectation and being one of the only to ever do it, are you saying, and I could be putting words in your mouth, so I'm going to just ask you straight up, are you saying that LeBron is the GOAT?
No, I'm not. I mean,
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had LeBron the last couple of years. I've moved LeBron up to my number 3 spot. I still got Michael at number 1 and Kareem at number 2. I think that, and listen, maybe the window's not closed on LeBron. If he wins a couple titles here in LA, maybe we reevaluate just, where his position is. I don't think there's anything wrong with being number 3. And maybe he could get to number 2. I just think the amount of, postseason dominance that Michael had was so great. I think the one thing that actually helps LeBron's cause, and this is something I tried to talk about a lot over the last few years, is as good of the star power that Michael had to knock off in some of those championships, whether it be, Barkley and Kemp and Peyton, or Karl Malone and John Stockton. I think the one thing that really helps LeBron's case here is that he arguably took out one of the great teams of all time, right? In the Golden State Warriors.
Yes.
And that has to, and the fact that he lost to them, I think needs to be a little bit to LeBron's credit as well, right? Like there's, Michael was the version of the Warriors back in his day. Like that was the team winning 72 games. So Michael never had to beat a team at the caliber that LeBron had to go up against in 4 straight finals and knock him off once. So there's a lot of hate towards LeBron about the number of times he's lost in the finals, and I think a couple of them really make sense, and I get it. Particularly that one against Dallas in 11. But I just say let's recognize how incredible that Warriors team was that LeBron had to go up against, and he actually beat him once. But with all that said, I still have Michael ahead of LeBron.
I wasn't even going to go this direction with this conversation and ask you the GOAT question, because I know you probably just as much as I do find this is like a never-ending discussion, and people are always curious someone's opinion on it. And essentially, it's just an opinion. We're never going to see them go up against each other. But it is something, as you touch on, one of my biggest arguments is, and we'll get back to the playoff discussion soon, is the fact that everyone wants to say the Golden State Warriors, as you talk about that 73-win team, was just as dominant, or the number 2 team, maybe the second best ever behind MJ and the Bulls. Right. Okay, so then we can't argue that LeBron, like, take away from LeBron losing to them and take away from LeBron beating them the next season, and ignore the fact that he beat the second best team ever of all time, as we all say, with the Golden State Warriors carrying the Cavs to do that, which is a team that was not expected to beat the Warriors. So that is always my argument, as well as why I actually think I would put him and MJ neck and neck, number 1, if we could have a tie, but everyone always wants to have a sole number 1. I'm not sure. I go for LeBron because that's my guy, but I never know. It'll be a discussion that will never end, and I'm sure a new name will be in the conversation as we move forward. Yeah. So getting back into the playoffs, also curious, as we look at the standings, we have the Bucks have clinched, the Raptors have clinched. The West and the East, looking at that top 8 with Boston, Miami, Philly, the Pacers, the Nets, and the Magic out of the East. If you are in the Eastern Conference and you're one of those 8 teams, let's say as of today, they all make the playoffs. Of course, Washington, Charlotte, and Chicago are right there, fighting to get in on the bubble. Who would you hate to face out of the East? Aside, a sleeper, I would say. Of course, we're all going to say the Bucks and Giannis. But if you had to look at the top 8 right now, who's a sleeper team that you feel like is trending in the right direction that you'd hate to play in the playoffs come round 1?
Yeah, I'm glad you said aside from Milwaukee, because if we're talking about that 96 Bulls team that won 72 and that 2016 Warriors team that won 73, we got to realize that the Bucks can become the 3rd team ever to win 70. So we got to make sure we put some respect on their name, because just how dominant they've been. But it is weird how they could become the 3rd team to win 70, and yet it doesn't feel like the overwhelming consensus that they're coming out of the East. And we say that, and there's just not a good, strong second favorite or strong team to knock them off. I think, if any one of these teams knock them off, you'd be like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. But I mean, my sleeper probably would be Boston, just because I think Jason Tatum is coming on, and his numbers in February and spilled over into the beginning here of March have just been unbelievable. And he's doing it lately without Kemba Walker too. So I just wonder if Jason Tatum has taken that step up that we didn't anticipate him taking until maybe next year or the year after that. He has really elevated his game, and I think with a healthy Kemba Walker, this team is really, really strong. Toronto's exceeded expectations. Obviously, they're better than they were last year at this time. And it's incredible that they lost Kawhi and Danny Green, and they're enduring all these injuries, and they played so well. I don't know that Miami and Indiana have the firepower or the star power to kind of compete with those teams. I think, the other team is Philadelphia. They certainly have the star power. They have more star power than any team in the Eastern Conference, but for whatever reason, they can't get their stuff together, and they can't win on the road. So, I'm not a big believer right now that they'll turn things around. Plus, they're dealing with plenty of injuries as well. We'll have to see, what happens not only with Joel Embiid, who seems to get injured all the time, and Ben Simmons, who's got this pinched nerve in his lower back, which seems like a pretty serious condition.
No, I agree. Honestly, with the Sixers, and being that I'm in the Philly area, the Philly sports bug has hit. That Philly sports curse is very real. We saw, whether it's regardless what the sport is, it seems like at some point something goes wrong, no matter how well a team on paper looks like they're going to be predicted to do that season. The Eagles had it. Of course, we all watched that unravel as they had. What's that?
They still won a Super Bowl, though, right?
They did. They did. Oh, trust me, I will never forget that day. But if you look at even the fact they had so many injuries, yes, they overcame that as a Cinderella team winning the Super Bowl with Nick Foles leading the way. Shout out to all my other Eagles fans, like myself. But looking at this past season, I mean, it's a lot of like what we're seeing with the Sixers, a team that coming into the season, everyone's saying they're a favorite. I mean, the Eagles did come out of the NFC East. The Sixers not looking like they're coming out of the East, but the Sixers looking like they're going to be a team that once Kawhi steps out, Kawhi and Danny Green move from Toronto, that the Sixers should step into that spot of being the top team in the East. And as you mentioned, it hasn't been them. They have underperformed even when they were quote unquote healthy. And now you add in injuries to the mix. And definitely I take them out of that equation of a team that's competing for that top spot coming out of the playoffs or likely to come out of the East in the playoffs. But I agree with you. Toronto has been surprisingly very fun to watch, and I love the fact that they are underdogs, and they have exceeded all expectations coming off of their championship. Everyone wrote them off because they didn't have Kawhi anymore, but here they are, number 2 in the East, and the Boston Celtics, I agree, Jason Tatum definitely has been, well, rightfully was February Player of the Month, and has been incredible this last stretch of the season that we've been seeing him. So I'm going to ask you the same question in the West. Any sleeper teams, again, aside from looking at the Lakers, and we'll even put the Clippers in that mix, who out of the West, looking at Denver, Houston, Utah, OKC, Dallas, and Memphis, who as of now are sitting in that top 8, would you hate to play come playoff time?
Probably say, well, I wanted to say Denver coming into the year. They're head scratching. They're for a team that's won over 40 games this year and clearly will win more than 50 games this year. It's just it's weird some of the games they lose, and sometimes they just look disinterested or don't feel like putting their foot on the gas pedal. Another team that's been up and down this year is the Utah Jazz. I thought adding Mike Conley would be smooth, kind of an Eagle-less guy and just willing to fit in, but for whatever reason, that really hasn't worked out too well. But I still think, their firepower with Donovan Mitchell and having Conley, who's been through the wars of the playoffs and has gone deep into the playoffs when he was in Memphis. And then, to have a guy like Rudy Gobert defending the rim and being as good as he has been at times. I think Utah could give him a scare, but honestly, I'd be stunned at this point if we did get Lakers Clippers in the West Finals.
I tend to agree with you yet again. I will say that OKC is another team that, as we've been talking about, teams that have had surprising seasons. They've had one that I think a lot of people wrote them off early, especially once Russell Westbrook, joined the Rockets. But with Chris Paul leading the way, they have still been a team that, as of now, is sitting in the top 8 in the West and at least going to be a potential playoff team. So we are by the time this show airs, we will be less than 40 days away from the start of the playoffs. So I think It's safe to officially, ask this question, being that we've been asking it probably since last summer when we saw some offseason moves. All right, Jared, curious to know your thoughts on, we'll start a step back. Who's in the Western Conference Finals and the Eastern Conference Finals? Who are your top 2 for each conference?
I told you Lakers Clippers for the West. I'll go there, and then I'll go Bucks Raptors.
Ooh, okay. So we're going top 2 for each. All right. So then, come finals time, when we get into it, who are you picking? And there's a lot of pressure here. No, not gonna lie. There's a lot at stake. No, just kidding. Nothing at stake here. Who do you have in the finals once we get there?
I think it'll be the Bucks in the East. I just believe in Giannis. I feel like they'll figure that out. And then I think in the West it's the Clippers. I just think that they're the most complete team. I think that they've been a little risky in my book with how they kind of had this kind of attitude where they'll be able to just flip the switch once the playoff comes. But I think a lot of that has been due to legit injuries that they've suffered. They've barely cracked double-digit games where all of them have been healthy. So I think it's a really small sample size. But I also think that they'll have enough time here down the stretch, assuming nobody else gets injured, to kind of work out the kinks and figure things out. But I just think, pretty much at every situation that will come up in the playoffs, the Clippers have an answer for every team. You want to go big, they can go big. You want to go small, they can go small. You want to have good perimeter players. They got the best perimeter defenders in the league. You want to dump the ball in. They've got some pretty decent rim protectors that'll figure it out, even though they're not the biggest guys in the league. And I just think from an offensive standpoint, they have so many different weapons too, right? Like, the Kawhi and Paul George could struggle, but if Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell are having good games and Landry Shamet are having good games, they'll be able to carry games. I just think that they have so much star power, but yet they're so deep. And I think that's a little different than the Lakers, who are just so top heavy with star power that you wonder, will the rest of the group be able to fly with them come the biggest moments of big playoff series?
Yeah, I mean, the Dion Waiters move doesn't add anything to you now.
I mean, he's their last guy off the bench, and he's and come the playoffs, all this talk about needing another ball handler. If you've watched LeBron in the finals, his run to the finals with Miami and then in Cleveland, he's the point guard. Like, all this talk about LeBron playing point guard is nothing new, particularly in the playoffs. I like the move for Dion Waiters for the regular season. It might actually get LeBron some more of a break during the regular season, where not as much pressure is on him, and maybe they can figure out how to run their offense without LeBron on the court with another guy who maybe could have the ball in his hands. But the problem with Dion Waiters is that he tends to be a little bit of a ball stopper, right? The ball gets in his hands, and about 90% of the time he touches the ball, he's going to end up shooting it. So I don't know that if it gets others involved, it's another guy who can create for himself, which is great. But ultimately in the playoffs, LeBron's not coming off the court all that much. They're going to need him. So I don't know where really Dion Waiters fits in.
Right. I definitely think he adds to the depth, and he's another guy that brings veteran and playoff experience to the team. So for that reason, can't hurt. But I agree with you. I think that we sometimes get caught up in a little too much of the details, where we know at the end of the day, when it comes to the playoffs, it's LeBron running things, and with the Clippers, it'll be Kawhi running things. It's just a matter of, as you talk about with the Clippers and even the Lakers, because they have a lot of moves, how they're going to gel and come together. Whereas the Bucks, we see them rolling throughout the season. They've been much more consistent all season long. So as of early March, your predictions: Clippers, Bucks finals. Okay, we'll see what happens there. A little different from mine, but I'm always curious to know. Oh, you already know who I've got. You know what? I actually have Lakers, but I have Lakers Celtics.
Okay. Well, nice.
Yeah. Cool. I want to fully believe in the Bucks coming out of the East. Of course, I want to fully believe in the Lakers coming out of the West, but I'm not completely sold on the Bucks playoff. It's a different type of season for them to turn that corner and be able to come out of the East. I still think they're missing something. I don't know. I just have a feeling that it's the Celtics right now, to me, are catching fire at the right time, and with players like Kemba Walker, who will hopefully be 100% healthy, and Jason Tatum, I just have them winning that. So I don't know. We'll see. It's exciting that we can even have this conversation. I always tell people, the fact we can even have a discussion, whereas in years past it was always team whatever LeBron was on versus the Warriors, that in itself is incredible and exciting to be able to have. So, Jared, where can our followers follow you on social media to keep up with all of your NBA coverage?
You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, Jared S. Greenberg. Check me out there, and hopefully you'll check out our games on TNT each Tuesday night, doing a game a week, and a lot of fun keeping people up to speed on NBA TV as well. We host Crunch Time, which is a really cool show where we it's kind of like the red zone of the NBA, where we bounce around. It's one-stop shop. We'll keep our finger on the pulse of the NBA, and we kind of say we show you the biggest moments of the night as they happen live. So that's every Wednesday and Friday night on NBA TV.
Awesome. Jared, it's been a pleasure having you on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. Thank you again so much for joining us as we talk about the playoff picture. And I look forward to following your content as well, and all that you're doing with your incredible NBA coverage. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Renee, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.